Alright guys, so for the Signpost Journal assignment, I have an excerpt here from Hatchet. It's actually a couple different excerpts from Hatchet, but we'll take a look at it together. It's a marking period 1 folder, and this is actually an assignments. If we go under Signpost Journals for marking period 1, we should see an assignment that says Signpost Journal number 1, and then also excerpts from Hatchet by Gary Paulson. So if we open this up, I have it embedded here in the page. If that's not working for whatever reason, I also at the bottom have a PDF here that you can download. But you can see it's just 3 pages. It's not a whole lot, and it's, not even the whole page. So this is what we're going to be reading. Now I have here, I opened the PDF in another window, just so I can kind of highlight some things. So we talked about the 6 different notice and note signposts, but really the one thing I have to, or want to point out in these excerpts is that there's really one signpost I'm hoping you see. And that's this right here. As you're reading through, you see over and over again, Brian mentions divorce, and it's not just once right after the other. You can see he mentions it here. He mentions it again on the second page. Starts the next excerpt talking about divorce. So here again we see it, divorce, the secrets, fights, the split, the big split, talking about his parents' divorce. Now this is at the beginning of the book, and if you've read Hatchet before, you understand that there's a lot of things that happen in Brian's life in the book that sort of impact his ability to do what he does, to survive out in the wild. But what this sort of does is gives us an idea of what this looks like. So when we see the signpost again and again, it's right here. So we found the signpost. We know what signpost it is and where it is, but now we need to know what to do with it. So if we go back into our Signpost Journals folder, and we go into our Signpost Journal questions, which is down here at the bottom, this is actually going to show us like the questions that will help us in our Signpost Journal. This is the question we need to answer. So we're here at again and again, and here's the questions we have to choose from to answer. It says, does the repetition make you think about the importance of the setting? Offer insight into the character, reveal something upcoming in the plot, reveal anything about the conflict, or reveal a possible theme for the book? Well, I think this repetition offers some insight into the character. If we go back into the excerpts, into Hatchet here, we're looking at life through the eyes of Brian, the main character. And he's getting loaded up into a plane to go to New York, he's leaving New York, going from his mom's to his dad's. Obviously he's traveling from one parent's house to the other, probably as a condition of his parents' divorce. And so obviously it's something that he is very much fixated on, and it's something that he's not over. It's probably recently happened, and obviously he's thinking about it. He even notices right here, he's sort of self-aware and says the thinking started. Like, I'm on this boring long plane ride, and all I have time to do is sit here and think about my parents splitting up. And so he reflects a lot on the experience, a tearing, ugly word, talking about divorce, meaning fighting, yelling, lawyers, and how he hated that. And so if I'm answering questions here for this excerpt, I think I'm going to say this is an again and again signpost, and this repetition offers a little bit of insight into the character. So when I open up my actual assignment, I go to Signpost Journal number 1. I'm going to open up my assignment. Now I don't have the button that would be right here that says my assignment or my document like you do. But I'm just going to open mine right here. So here's my document. This is giving me sort of a format to follow. In fact, if you want to look at it as the races format and like each one of these is a sentence, that's totally fine. So right here it says in your first sentence include the book title, identify the signpost, summarize the scene, and where the signpost appears. So I'm going to say, in the book Hatchet by Gary Paulson, Brian Robeson, excuse my typing there, Brian Robeson keeps thinking of divorce again and again. This signpost happens when he is on a long plane ride from his mom's house to his dad's. So I've basically answered the R part of saying, here's the book title, here's the signpost, and here's what's happening. I just sort of gave one brief one-sentence summary. It doesn't have to be a whole summary of the book. You're just saying what's happening right there, right then, in the moment that you find the signpost. Now I go on to the next part, A, choose and answer the appropriate signpost question. So I already did that. I do have a link to them in the actual document if you want to follow it right here. But you can also just access the Schoology page as well. But anyway, we're answering the question that says, what does the insight offer about the character? Basically, what insight does this offer into the character? Right? I'm going to look at it exactly so I have the right word here. Does the repetition offer insight into the character? Again, I'm answering a question, so I need to rephrase the question. This repetition offers insight into Brian's character. He is obviously still very upset about his parents' divorce, and that is why he can't stop thinking about it. And I gotta fix a few of my grammatical mistakes here, but that's where I'm saying just basically I'm answering that question. Now, of course, I have to give a quote. Well, in the excerpt right here, I have a quote talking about divorce, where he calls it a tearing, ugly word that means fighting, yelling, lawyers. God, how he hated lawyers. And I'm honestly just going to put that right in the book. Right in my journal entry. He even calls divorce, I'm going to put my quotation marks because this is someone else's words, a tearing, ugly word that means fighting and yelling. Lawyers. God, how he thought he hated lawyers. The divorce left a big impact on him. And I'm going to change that word big to negative, okay? Because it's obviously very negative. He doesn't have very good thoughts about it. This is the E part where I'm explaining how the quote supports my answer. And so in the end, then I'm going to summarize. How is this significant to the story? So Brian's fixation, which is a fancy word for saying he's obsessed with it, on his parents' divorce significantly affects his ability to handle his emotions. this sets the scene for the rest of the book, where he will have to rely on himself much more. Now that is a lot. I'm going to change that right there. So that's a pretty long Signpost Journal. And in fact, if you look at my perfect Signpost Journal example, my perfect example is even a little shorter than that. So this one's a little bit on the long side, but you can see that I answered each one of those individual things. Now you can honestly, just go through and do the RACES thing, RACES, restate, answer, cite, explain, summarize. You can do that right down here in your document where you basically have a sentence for each one. I am totally fine with that. But if you go through and follow this format, if you find a signpost just like this or answer this again and again signpost in a similar way to I have, you are on your way to understanding how to make a signpost journal entry based on the notice and note signposts we talked about in class.